We've had first practice and now 1 hour of pre-qualifying for the 2021 Fanatec GT World Challenge Europe, the sprint round, the 4th round of a 5-round championship. And for Charles Weerts and Dries van Toor, they come here with a tidy points advantage, but what is always the case at Brands Hatch, it's going to be super close on times. We saw lap times around 1 minute 24 in the practice session first thing this morning. Track temperature is warming up, it's nearly 25 degrees, that's risen 7 degrees. Good to see the crowd here, but this is a crucial setting to get the cars ready for qualifying. 2 races tomorrow, but John Watson, it's about getting the cars out on the track, not losing track time. We saw a few people losing track time this morning. It's going to bite because we're dealing here in fractions, small fractions of a second that are really going to count.
Well, as always at Brands, we have to take into consideration it's a very demanding circuit. Some drivers have never been here. There's a load of pressure because we had a delay earlier in the morning when a car had gone off, barriers were damaged. So now we've got a clear 1 hour for all 28 competitors to go out, let both drivers get time behind the wheel. But, you know, it's a circuit that is uncompromising, and any little driving error is penalised. We've seen cars getting into the gravel traps. We've had a couple of full course yellows earlier this morning. Everybody is under pressure to deliver, and the delivery is all about when you go into qualifying later this afternoon, and those 2 qualifying sessions are going to begin at 3:15 and then at 4:45, there's a gap between them. This is the pivotal session prior to going to qualifying, and drivers will be extending the potential, the edge of grip that they've got here at Brands Hatch.
Now, we had cars going off at Westfield, we had cars going off at Hawthorne, and right at the end of the session, we had one of the Lamborghinis, Constellapalenen, had been off twice under his own steam, but this McLaren has been pinged because this is the incident, sorry, the Aston has, for turning across the nose of Ollie Wilkinson was going out the inside, Thomas Tuchel in the, not Constellapalenen, and that was his 3rd incident, and he's got a penalty to serve come the race for that move across the bows of the McLaren. Yeah, so Garage 59 in a little bit of trouble there. Yeah,
the McLaren was making a clean move up the inside. There was opportunity to make the pass, and at the time I said basically Tuchel hadn't, his spatial awareness, that's how I described it, was not as good as it should have been. He wasn't aware, as far as I could see, that Wilkinson was behind, and then he just drove straight across the front of the McLaren. So clearly the McLaren, well, it's been tidied up. It was incredibly dusty when it came to a halt after that contact, but can't see any people working on the car at all. So, but it's got time. It's losing 10 minutes of this pre-qualifying session as a result of that. Right, times on the board, John, and in free practice 1, it was ACA ASP filling 3 of the top 4 positions, and it's ACA ASP car at the top. It's Jules Gounon in the number 89, sharing with Petru Umbrescu at the top of the charts. Fred Vervish, Sansalot Racing Audi in 2nd, and Christopher Haase brought on board this week, on the 25 crew, is 3rd fastest. So early days yet, but Sansalot Racing, they're up there. In fact, immediately being deposed by another Audi, 99 in this early stage. That's Dennis Marshall, Attempto Racing. And Raffaele Marcello has gone even quicker than anybody. First car in this part of the session to break the 1 minute 25-second barrier by, well, he's actually at 9/10 of a second ahead of Jules Gounon in an identical Mercedes. Yeah, there's just a clear message, a 10-minute stop and go for causing a collision for the 159 Aston Martin. But it's all ACA ASP at the moment. As I pointed out, 3 of the top 4 runners in free practice 1 were ACA ASP Mercedes. Top 2 at the moment, Raffaele Marcello by, well, it's as good as a second, isn't it? 0.985 of a second over Jules Gounon. Lucas Stoltz, another Mercedes, up into 3rd place. Haven't seen too much of the Stoltz Engel car, of course, with that gold driving crew that weren't allowed out in the very first practice session of the day. The one that caused the stoppage when Benjamin Goethe went off at Westfield through the gravel trap and beyond, and that led to barrier delays. Wow, Raffaele Marcello goes digging in the sand, and that's not a very good move, having just set fastest race lap, then bumps and gets back on the racetrack. Goodness knows how much gravel he'll have dragged on. I wonder why he maybe didn't choose. Well, that was again the view from where Marcello was sitting. Again, just missing the edge of the barrier as you come back onto the circuit, but indication just how hard Marcello having already, well, it's now a 6/10 of a second advantage over Jules Gounon, but how hard he is trying. Getting back to the scene of the crime 1 lap earlier. This time executes the corner absolutely perfectly.
Yes, rather more conservative style, but you can't lie when you've got the dusty tyres, the sidewalls, the tyres. But yes, that barrier really does swing on you. But the one thing you don't want to do in this session is lose time. Of course, that 159 Aston Martin has had 10 minutes of the session taken away from it, not allowed out for the first 10 minutes. The stop and go. So that's really going to hurt, because we've just been talking, John, about track time being everything. Looking at the track map at the moment, almost everybody's pretty evenly spaced around the circuit. As I say that, the 188 Aston Martin slows down a little bit going through Westfield and Dingledale. But it's about getting things right and also nearly getting it wrong. Very, very sideways moment there for number 25, Christopher Haase. Load of understeer going into and down the hill out of Paddock Hill Bend. So pushing on and, again, just keep it on the track.
Well, a driver of Christopher Haase's experience, and look how wide he runs coming out of Graham Hill Bend, knows Brands Hatch intimately. It's a circuit he's raced on many times. Usually it's always been in an Audi. So there's nothing for him to learn, but it's just dialing his car into his particular preferred setup. And of course, by being a 2-driver race, you have to find a balance between. There's no use having one driver who can drive the car quickly and then your co-driver is unable to drive it to save his life. So both have got to find a balance, a setup that works as we go across the line. And the Bentley,
I think it's the 107 car. I think it's Ulysses Depot, and he's just gone up into 4th place. Okay, that's who we were riding with. Let's double check. 107. Yes, so he was down in about 20th position.
Warning flag 89, track limits twice.
Oh, that's Jules Gounon, who currently second quickest, so 2 track warning limits for the young Frenchman. Good run by Ulysses Depot to get the Bentley. We didn't see much of them in the session earlier today, but they've shown now the pace that we have known that car has had. Another interesting time, Dries van Thorn, the 32 Audi, the car that is leading the championship by a country mile. Dries van Thorn's completed 5 laps, but currently 7th quickest, and in fact he's not even the quickest of the Audis. He's only 3rd quickest. Then it's Michel who's 3rd quickest. Then you got Frederic Verviche in the Santalog car is 6th, and then Dries van Thorn's dropped down to 8th.
Well, one thing we found quite surprising this morning, listening to a lot of the drivers, is how few of them have raced here a lot. Christopher Haase, of course, has, but Ulysses Depot, you're thinking he's a novice here, but he's done 2 years in British F3, so for him, the Grand Prix circuit at Brands Hatch isn't a mystery, but lots of very experienced drivers, just by circumstance and the championships they've been racing in, haven't raced here many times, some not at all, which I find surprising, but I guess you look at the championship dates and that tells the story.
Keeping an eye on Jules Gounon, having been given the warning black and white flag for 2 indiscretions with track limits, so he's going to be a good boy certainly for the next lap or 5 as Chris Fogger sits on board the Sky Tempesta Ferrari. Another driver who never been to Brands, or barely been to Brands, or never been on the Grand Prix circuit at Brands.
Yeah, well, he's now, of course, as the Pro-Am champion, he's moved up to the Silver Cup class. Just talking of the Pro-Am, who's top? Well, don't look at the screens. You know it's Johnny Adam. 188 on pole position for the second of the races, the last sprint round at Misano, and he's showing with Alexander West, but he's the absolute pro. 4 victories in the British GT Championship, so he's got loads of track experience here, particularly in Aston Martins. What's he driving? An Aston Martin, so expect Johnny to move on up the charts. But at the moment it's Raffaele Marcello. We've now got all 3 ACA ASP Mercedes at the top of the charts, because Jim Plas just moved up into 2nd place overall in the 87.
Dries van Thorn on camera through sector 1, up just under half a second now, coming up to the conclusion of sector 2 between the exit of Sheen Curve and there's the demarcation line. So he's lost a chunk of time in that middle sector, which I must say surprising, because Dries van Thorn is usually wheel perfect every way around a lap. Now coming up to the conclusion,
it's also surprising, John, because he didn't have any particular traffic. He's now got the 107 Bentley pulling off into the pits in front of him. Now he's got more clear track. At the end of his lap's probably going to be good enough to be an improvement, but for Dries, he goes up into 5th, so that middle sector really cost him. Without that, you have to wonder where he'd go. He's 8/10, nearly 9/10 of a second down on Raffaele Marcello's best time.
Overruns in Druids, just came in a little bit too quick, couldn't get the nose tucked in, and now down into Graham Hill Bend. So this lap, he's backed out of it. He's got traffic ahead, but he's just backed out of it, which is the sensible thing to do. look and find more space for yourself around the racetrack as the current quickest car back into the pits. Marcello having done a 24.954. Now only 2 and a bit tenths of a second quicker than the sister car, Jim Pla. And Klaus Bachler is now in the 222. That's the Mad Panda Racing. He's no, I beg your pardon.
No,
it's a Porsche. Klaus Bachler.
Allied Racing Porsche.
No, the Porsche up into 4th place. Great news for Porsche.
Yeah, that's really, really impressive. Also, Dennis Marshall had been 4th, now pushed back to 5th by Bachler's time. Top Audi, so that's impressive for Attempto Racing. Kicking out the dust, though. Jim Pla, 2nd fastest, but he's put his fastest first sector in. If he can repeat that element of gain, look, 0.143 of a second in the first sector. Oh, he hasn't got too much traffic ahead of him. That's very good news. Goes through Sheen Curve, right. And what's his 2nd sector time? He just completed that to see if that's an improvement. Down a little bit, but maybe not getting the improvement in. But again, consistent speed.
But just looking at timing and scoring once again, we're now seeing Mercedes 1, 2, 3, 4 of the top 6 are Mercedes. And Lucas Stolz in the number 6 car we always look at being a front-running car. It's down to being dumped down into 10th position. I mean, you blink and all of a sudden what was a top 4 position is now just in the top 10.
Okay, 1 second covers the top 8 runners. That's from Raffaele Marcelli in the pit lane in the 88 Mercedes, still top, but Ulisses de Pauw bringing up the 2nd bracket. He's in 8th place overall in the better of the Bentleys. Top in Pro-Am is Dominic Baumann now, SPS Automotive Performance. Johnny Adam, who was 14th, has fallen to 16th, but expect more from him for Garage 59. Now, Lamborghini, best of the Lamborghinis, some way down the charts. We're looking down, it's Ricardo Fella in 12th place overall. Have they got their mojo back? So much work after Spa 24 Hours to rebuild 2 of their 3 races.
But this car, Norbert Siedler, went way, okay, they've only done a few laps, but all the way down at 21st, would expect to see this, the 163 car he shares with Albert Costa, to be right at the sharp end. So it comes out through clearways, through Clark Curve. Now just the run to the line, comes across the line now. So where's that car? It was 21st and stays 21st.
Improves but stays in 21st position, 2 seconds off the pace. Starting to become a little bit cloudier now, John. I don't think that's going to change things too much.
Well, there's a big black cloud floating across the circuit, sort of from Paddock Hill and Druids all the way diagonally across the racetrack. We have not had any rain over the day so far. That looks threatening. It may pass, but let's hope it does.
Let's hope so, because it's actually a really nice weekend for racing so far. Started with brilliant sunshine, but as soon as I started approaching Brands Hatch, it went into the clouds. But looks like it's smiling and shining on Miguel Ramos, the Barwell Motorsport Lamborghini. He's in 19th place at the moment. That's surely not going to last, because that looks like a pretty good lap from him. And he moves up the order just up to 16th place. So places gained, and another 2 or 3 tenths, and that could move him up towards the tail of the top 10. So running in the Pro-Am class, moves to 2nd in class. Still Dominic Baumann for SPS Automotive, but importantly for Ramos, he's a position ahead at the moment of Johnny Adam.
Rick Broikers, fastest overall in the Mad Panda, currently 24th. Where's this going to end up? Fastest! Where did that pop up from?
Even got a toe down the start-finish straight, so Mad Panda will be having a big smile on its face and maybe a few more bamboo shoots, but goes fastest by 15 thousandths. It's enough, it's important, it's good for momentum, it's good for pride.
I suspect my fallback situation when cars pop up out of positions that they're not normally in to positions they aspire to be in, with fresh rubber.
One has to think that might be the case. Right, one car we need to really keep an eye on, glad we caught that now, is car number 30, Christopher Mies at the wheel. This was the car that went off this morning, got a little bit of damage, but this was the one that went off at Westfield when Benjamin Goethe was driving it. But Chris Mies brought in for this weekend and really starting to make it go very well indeed. Where's that going to pop up in the charts?
Currently 14th.
9th place.
That's a good improvement.
Yep, good step up there. Normally this car is driven by Kelvin van der Linde alongside Benjamin Goethe, but in this year of years, with Catlenders being shunted ever further backwards through the season, of course, there are clashes. Haven't seen so much. We talked about Mauro Engel, the TopSport WRT Mercedes. We know with Engel and Stolz they've got a tip-top lineup, but it just hasn't been a year that's fully gelled for them for whatever reason. There's been pace, and someone's just gone off ahead of it.
As it ever. Well, usual thing, just running 2 wheels off the road on the exit, the paddock bend. We didn't see the car, but the residue was certainly in the air. No, it's a car I always hold extremely high expectations of, but for some reason, and that might have been the 31 Audi that picked up the dust, Tomita behind the wheel. It may not have been, but certainly he's the next car up from the number 6 Mercedes over the back end, looking like it's sliding around a little bit. For some reason, this car, which I would have always, again, along with the 32 Audi, put us in my top 6, 3 rows of the grid, has been just been shaded.
Very hard for the team to put its finger on what is going on. Now, just looking who else deserves a pat on the back. Matteo Drudi, suddenly for Tempto Racing, bangs it up into 4th place. So he is now the top Audi runner. Dries van Tor in 6th place, it's the second fastest Audi runner. And Alex Acker in the 99, the sister Tempto Racing car, he is the 3rd best Audi runner. He's in 8th place overall, but I think that time was set by Dennis Marshall. It was still from Dennis's time in the car. Quite a lot of the crews have changed over to their second driver at the moment. We've got 43 minutes remaining. It's a 1-hour pre-qualifying session, so they could chop and change. But with a few teams having lost a bit of running time this morning, it's about getting everyone their running time out on the circuit.
So on board with Dries van Tor, through Westfield, through Sheen Curve, now into Sterling's corner. Again, I mean, it all looks so in control. You can see on the screen 4th gear up to Philippe Poul, 5th gear. No, momentarily, no, he just gets down to 3rd. So currently 6th quickest, and he's into the pit lane because either they're going to make a change to the car, or we're going to do a driver change and have Charles Vance go out and do a few laps. Just looking out skyward as we're in the middle of this session, we've got 42 minutes remaining. Maybe teams are doing the same thing and just thinking we want to give both our drivers as much dry running if that rain does come. But at least they had the opportunity. There you can see the view, the weather's going away from the pit lane, whereas what we're sitting in the commentary booth that's coming, I think, from southwest.
Well, what we have got for Team WRT, maybe preordained all 3 of their Audis in the pit lane. That's Ryuichiro Tomita's car in the middle, the Rofco off-liveried car in the background that was going very well indeed earlier on. Who is making moves? Suddenly it's a good time to be out on the circuit, because with about half a dozen cars in the pits, it means there's that much more space out on the track. Quite a lot of the drivers actually have just come out there completing their outlap. So start to see some new names on the cars, new names towards the top of the charts, but going very well is the 66 Audi, Matteo Drudi. 4th fastest at the moment. It's time just over half a second down on that great lap from Rick Brokers in the number 90 Mad Panda Motorsport Mercedes that sits atop the 3 Mercedes at the top of the charts. Timo Boguslavski's 88 car, he's taken over from Raffaele Marcello, that's still in 2nd place, and Konstantin Tereshchenko's taken over from Jim Pla, so he's in 3rd place ahead of Matteo Drudi. There is Drudi approaching Pilgrim's Drop, just about to dive into the compression under the bridge and then up Hawthorne Hill towards Hawthorne. Such a tricky corner, but drivers actually have had a very good job of it there. We've only had one spinner, and that was Adam Christodoulou of all people, but I have a suspicion it might have been a bit of a puncture that pitched him round.
It was certainly an unusual way to lose a car going into Hawthorne, so he was way off again, the entry point, and then had caught the grass, spun around across it. In fact, another car coming through the corner, so that was another little moment that there you get an impression. The circuit width is the same as pretty much every racetrack, but it's the sense that the trees and everything is just crowding down on top of you.
Yeah, it makes you feel like a little bit of a puddle. Top of the screen, you can just with grey clouds, but I think they're like, I'll keep my fingers crossed. I think they're floating their way past. I did fancy a second ago, I thought I saw a raindrop on a lens, but maybe not. Maybe I was just getting ahead of myself. Now, is this normal work on the championship leader's car? It looks as though it's all cool, calm, collected. Dries van Tor's had his run. One presumes Charles Weerts has now been strapped in. 40 minutes. Ooh, now take a look down.
To car 99, track limits twice.
Alex Acker
in the 99 attempt to racing. Added one of the 2, but those clouds, suddenly there's a whole lot grayer looking up the pit lane. If you want to know geographically, that is looking at the clouds at Clark Curve, the start of the start-finish straight, but I think they're moving away. That's my ambition.
Ben Barnicoat getting ready to do his time behind the wheel. Ollie Wilkinson will bring the car in. 39 minutes of the session remaining. So whereabouts Wilkinson is currently 16th on a 126.4. And again, so much of any time improvement is ultimately going to come from running your freshest set, or if those that want to run a brand new set, bearing in mind there's two 15-minute qualifying sessions coming up later this afternoon. In fact, the 20-minute qualifying sessions, I beg your pardon, coming up later, and normally it's your first time lap should be your best, but if you're not too aggressive you can get two and even possibly a third.
So Ricardo Feller pushing on very hard indeed. So good middle sector, should be an improvement, but up to 4th place last time around when the Lamborghinis were nowhere, and that's the next one after him is down in, I have to look down to 19th position. That's from the other team, and now up into 3rd position Ricardo Feller goes. So he's the Swiss driver who's just having such a brilliant season. He showed his form at the end of 2019, built on it in 2020, and now he's rock solid. He's almost the go-to driver in these Lamborghinis. And for Emil Frey Racing, just to reiterate, they've had to rebuild 2 cars after a really bad accident at the Spa 24 Hours.
But also remember, not only did they have to rebuild 2 cars that were destroyed, but after the pre-Spa test, which came the week following they raced the sprint race at Zandvoort, Norbert Siedler had a major accident again on the top of Rouge and Radio, and that car was a virtual write-off as well.
So tricky. We're hearing reports, maybe I wasn't going blind, but possible drops of rain around this part of the circuit. Westfield, yes. So there we are, just as we talk about it, it's become slippery. That was a big save for Feller.
Yeah, and I think he might have just caught the edge of the curb as well. So if there is a small amount of residual rain...
to car, 26 track limits twice.
Okay, so really Panis or Fred Babiche, we don't know which of the two.
Fred's in the car at the moment, but often you pay the price for the crime that takes a while to report. But so I thought it was the very camera on which I thought I saw that, and at Westfield I thought I saw a drop, and quite clearly that sideways moment up there suggests the track is a little greasier than before, but a good save.
Very good save, but it was a very abrupt snap oversteer. So those small, I mean, normally a small amount of moisture on the circuit at this time with the ambient and track temperature, it would pretty much evaporate on contact with the racetrack or the curbing. But it doesn't take an awful lot just to change the degree of grip from being in control to being virtually out of control. Here we are, one lap further on. Now let's see, does he run the curb or does he stay away from it? He stays away from it. I wonder why.
Fast learners, that's Miguel Ramos, one of the 2 Portuguese drivers, showing definite drops of rain at Westfield. Not a tricky corner. Oh,
not a place to go off though.
Certainly isn't. Lots of gravel trap on the outside, but the track generally, if you lose it, you're going to be into the compression as you drop down to Dingledell, and then it's anybody's guess.
Between the exit of Westfield and the bottom of Dingledell, there's no gravel, it's just grass, and then you've got a pretty solid barrier, and it's all sloping away from you. So there's nothing, nature doesn't give you any help at all.
Just looking to see if Miguel Ramos will make a move. He's going well in the Pro-Am class. He's 2nd in the Pro-Am class at the moment, but I can't see if he's going to improve from 20th place overall. I think suggests not with that slippery surface out of the far 2 corners on this Grand Prix loop at Brands Hatch. So it's Rick Brokers in the pits at the moment with the Mad Panda Motorsport Mercedes, but they lead the way, and John sniffed and he thought he smelt fresh rubber having been put on that car.
So on board the 88 Mercedes, Timo Boguslavski coming up to the part of the racetrack where we've... and there you can see almost sudden, very quick movement on the hands, and that caught Boguslavski. Takes a massive amount of curb on the inside going through Westfield. Now Westfield was the wetter part of those 2 corners that we'd seen 1 lap earlier. Again, loads of curb on the inside through Sheen. Then launches it down into Sterling's. Can't do so much on the inside, but watch the exit, the curve there gets slippery. So Boguslavski gets through that. But that was, again, a moment that was just very, very rapid and unexpected. So just have to be cautious.
You do, but I just think it's so difficult. Track is bone dry, slippery. And when you go to Hawthorne and Westfield, you're really going to be on it. You've got to carry so much speed through those corners. And yeah, that was a big snap moment for Timo. Bone dry here, but that big dark cloud has moved its way almost over the pit lane now. Is it still dropping?
So back again on the 88 down into Graham Hill Bend. Track here looks fine. I mean, there's no indication that there's rain, nothing on the, certainly that we can see on the windscreen, and it was only those cameras on the outside of Westfield that we picked up the sense that there was a little bit of rain falling, but so far the windscreen on the Mercedes is clear as the proverbial down the hill, down Pilgrim's Drop. Watch, see what happens when it comes to turn in. Oh yes, a lot more comfortable, a lot more in control.
A degree of circumspection, and there's no circumspection from Ricardo Feller. He was fourth, he improved to third place, he improved his time, and in his next lap he's gone into second place. He's just 14 thousandths down on this car, the Mad Panda Motorsport Mercedes, that clearly not out on the circuit, waiting to go. But look at the dark clouds over Clark Curve in the background, but the darkest cloud is actually almost above the pit lane at the moment, but I can't see out of the window whether it's dropping any rain, but certainly that flurry out at Westfield was enough to make drivers drive very much on their tiptoes.
It spooks you. You can't see it on the windscreen. It's only the camera lens that we were using at Westfield that we realised there was a small amount of moisture. So what's happening with the number 6? Still waiting for the performance. So Lucas Stolz has found some. He's actually up into 4th place on this current run done a 1:25.0, but that still waters the gap. It's little more than a tenth and a bit between that and the current fastest car, Rick Walker. So top 4 covered by a little over 1/10 of a second.
Well, Lucas Stolz is now starting to make that TopSport WRT Mercedes really start to sing up to 4th place. He's got to find just a few thousandths of a second. He's only just over 1/10 down on the ultimate pace, still in the car that has been taken over now by Ezekiel Perez Compacts. But bragging rights still with Rick Broikers. He set the fastest time, 1:24.939 seconds, but it's very close at the top, and it's all Mercedes with the exception of the car in second place, which was Ricardo Feller, who's done a sterling job to go second fastest. And on this lap, Lucas Stolz picks up the pace yet more. This is very good. He's got one car just in front of him, but it's looking good for him. And Lucas Stolz now sweeping round. He's improved in that middle sector. What can he do going at the start-finish line? He was 4th. Still half an hour to go. He goes to the top of the charts, up to the top. 1:24.918. So I said at the outset, John, we'd be dealing in small fractions of a second. That's just 21 thousandths.
Yeah, yes, and I think that's pretty much how it's going to remain for the remaining 30 minutes or so. But what is interesting watching Lucas Stolz driving and comparing I was going to say how much less frenetic it looks, but the back end of the Mercedes did momentarily step out at the bottom of Graham Hill Bend. Compare that with what we'd seen from Rick Broikers, or certainly from Raffaele Marciello, who really are much more physical in their driving style. I mean, it's exciting to watch. But Lucas Stolz has driven you wouldn't have seen that lap time coming, just as the stopwatch told the story.
Stop and go penalty, 5 minutes for car 89, disrespecting track limits.
Oh, Jules Gugnon's car, whether he's the culprit or whether Jim Barescu has been the guilty one, but 5 minutes lost. Well, they've got a good pace in that car, but you don't want to give up free time because of just disrespecting track limits.
So for Petra Umbarescu, well, and for Jules Gugnon, time off the track is not good. So they had one warning, they had 2 warnings, and it kept on being warned. So unfortunately for them, but it was of their own making. Maybe some of the track limits were because it became slippery and they went out beyond. But we were told beforehand that certainly the first corner, Paddock Hill Bend, this corner, or if you go too wide, you'll get pinged. Chris Froggatt just about keeping the car. Sorry, that's Giorgio Roda.
Giorgio Roda came around Paddock Hill Bend as if he was driving on the road. He was on the left-hand side of the racetrack. And why he was way out there, difficult to understand. Maybe he had seen another car coming and was prepared to concede, but he didn't. He could have done it as easily going up into Druids, and not getting that wide at Paddock Hill Bend is never a good idea.
So the fastest car, Lucas Stolz, the number 6 TopSport WRT Mercedes. We were talking about how it has yet to find its form this season, really. Well, it's just shown a very good hand here. Now, welcome this weekend to Ram Racing. Macanese racer Kevin C. largely done his racing career in TCR type, silhouette saloons, but has done a bit of Lamborghini racing and really starting to find some form on a double visit form and the gravel he found at Paddock Hill Bend. He's sharing that with Adam Christodoulou, and it's Adam on board at the moment.
Yeah,
time 1:26.9, so he's it's 1.3 seconds down, but Adam will be the driver in the car that sets the pace, and Kevin in this Pro-Am lineup will do the rest as he learns the circuit.
Yeah, that's an improvement for Christodoulou over the last or previous best lap. So he's picked about 5 places, in fact. And one would assume that once they get the rhythm and get the basic feeling of the car where they want it, then with Christodoulou behind the wheel, you'd expect to see further improvements coming.
Yeah, obviously, the idea is to give Kevin C as much time in the car on the track as they possibly can. Adam knows the car, he knows the circuit really well, but he's still got to try and find that base setup that is going to be kind enough for Kevin to feel comfortable when it comes to qualifying.
Noticing just coming up the Sheen curve, the left front splitter, the little titanium plates were actually grinding out. So the car running quite low at the front, not doing it going through clearways or Clark Curve, just through that one particular corner. McLaren in the pit lane. The 31 Audi looks like it's about to make its way out of the pit lane as Christodoulou comes across the line. 19th position, no further improvement that we can see.
Close to his best. He was down by 0.02 of a second. So if you want 2 consecutive laps being super close, those are the ones. That's what you expect from a pro driver. And Fred Verviche out of one of the 2 Sansalot Racing Audis he's showing this weekend with Aurélien Panis. This was one of the cars that got warned a couple of times for exceeding track limits. But Fred now out of the car.
Yeah, so Panis gets in, straps himself in. Interesting, they push the car back into the garage to enable the team. They're going to change, as they would say in America, change the rotors. To us, it's the discs, the disc brake. So the massive ventilated discs, certainly on the left side, about to be changed. I don't know why. I assume they might be changing side to side. It would be nice to keep a balance of, if you're going to change both sides, not one side, but maybe that's what they will get around to. We've got 27 minutes yet to go.
So as we look at Sansalot Racing Audi, just waiting to see some quick laps coming in from Ferraris. At the moment we've had 27 of the 28 cars set lap times, and the Ferraris are 24th, that's the Rinaldi Racing car, 26th, the Sky Tempesta Racing car, and Andrea Bertolini's car is slowest of all. So the pace not yet there for Ferrari this weekend.
It's surprising, because the 2 Ferraris did a sterling job, a stunning job when we saw them at Spa-Francorchamps. Different racetrack clearly, but that car, that Ferrari, the chassis, I think is one of the finest of the chassis currently competing, and it's strange as to why that isn't translating into slightly better performances.
So riding on board with Giorgio Roda, he's 26th at the moment. His best time just over 2 seconds down on Luca Stolz's chart topping time of 1 minute 24.918 seconds.
Track is declared wet. Track is declared wet. All cars lights on.
Interesting, because it's, I don't know where it is wet, but obviously the race control can see circuit. Maybe it's just the light rather than the track being wet. So cars have been informed they must now switch on their road lights. There's no moisture on the windscreen as Giorgio Roda brings the 93 Ferrari into its pit garage. There's the sister, or not the sister, there's the other Ferrari, which is the car of Bertolini, number 52, which disappointingly, I have to say, is the slowest of the entire 27-car field.
Well, wait to see what Andrea can do to pick up the pace, but not many cars in the pit lane, and I can't see any changing of tyres to any of the different sorts of tyres at the moment. So I think we will get Luca Stolz's car back on the track. That's fastest of all. That's the number 6 Top Sport WRT Mercedes. Who else is in the pits? Raffaele Marcello's car, the 88 Mercedes. That's still outside the ASP garage. And of course the 89 car was the one that got a 5-minute stop-and-go penalty for exceeding track limits just too many times. I think they said it was, I can't remember if they said it was 5 in all, but it certainly was enough to raise the ire of the race officials.
Quick glimpse of the 163, and again it's not been Norbert Siedler behind the wheel, currently 21st. There's a bit of rain up there, double into Druid, so that's again the telltale with the camera lenses are picking up that moisture. So it's not significant, but it's just a cumulative thing. If it just continues to do that for another 3 or 5 minutes, it might just change the complexion of the level of grip. A little bit of rubber being laid by the Lamborghini on the exit of Surtees and then the drop down Pilgrim's Drop.
Fabulous, fabulous stretch of circuit. And I always just love it on the opening lap when you've got the cars going down, they're almost two abreast, and then having to get through these tricky corners, Hawthorns and then Westfield, and shuffle their order. But right now, it looks a little bit dry there. Just remember, what, about 4 or 5 laps ago, we had a couple of cars having big twitches as they discovered the track suddenly was a little bit damp, and certainly the save we saw on board with Timo Boguslavski was a very, very good one indeed. But to go from bone dry with no sign of rain other than a dark cloud, and then discover it at those corners in particular when you're committed, certainly puts your heart in your mouth. Now Lamborghini, just apart from Riccardo Feller, who's sitting in 3rd place, the next best is Constant Appalainen in 114, but the 163 car, Norbert Siedler, just looking to find the pace.
Just watching the front of the 163 coming into paddock, the front under braking, hunting around a little bit, doesn't look fully planted under brakes. So Norbert Siedler could not, I think, be content with that level of performance. Just need to get another view of it 1 lap further down the road. You want confidence under brakes coming up into paddock bend, because you do have to make your commitment into the corner before you actually see the apex. So if you're a little bit uncertain, but the stability of the car isn't quite with you, maybe not let you be so bullish about it.
It's a 1 hour pre-qualifying session. We've got 23 minutes remaining. We've reached this sort of hiatus. Very few quicker times coming in at the moment, largely because we've just had quite a lot of driver changeovers, so the new drivers getting up to speed, but also in terms of tyre life, the tyre life has fallen away a bit. The quick times came in early on, and if you're a fan of Mercedes, 4 of the top 5 runners from Mercedes, and it's TalkSport WRT at the top of the charts. Panda Motorsport in 2nd. The next to Mercedes is the 88 car, Raffaele Marcello, has been in the pits recently, just taken it over, and Konstantin Terashenko. But there is the 3rd car, the 89 Mercedes, the 3rd car from ACA ASP. This had a 5-minute stop and go in the pit lane for exceeding track limits, and they will do the driver change on that soon, but they're paying the price. They're losing track time, and you never ever want to do that at Brands Hatch.
Interesting, they've got the car, all 4 wheels and tyres are off, and there is Jules looking down, keeping an eye on procedures, giving the guys a little bit of advice, telling them do it this way, do it that way. Just walking around, got to lean into the cockpit.
So Petro and Borescu will take over from him. And the 107 Bentley.
Yeah,
Ulysses to Powell, Pierre-Alexandre Jean-Pierre should be on board, because Ulysses did the early running. In fact, that was up in about 4th place, wasn't it? And that's as it sits in the pits, and other people go faster, has dropped down. Black and white warning flag, most recently to car number 25. We saw that in the pits a short while ago, one of the 2 Santilot Racing Audis. That was the Leo Roussel Christopher Haas car, and we know the Aurelien Panis Fred Vavish sister car has also been done for track limits. A live topic at every single race circuit, and you've got to stay on the right side of the law.
And not before time.
Absolutely.
In a sense, Brands defines the track limits, because anything beyond them is usually big trouble. But, I mean, coming through Graham Hill Bend here, you can see how much of the track is used, and this is an area where drivers, if they continue to run wide, as we just have seen, then that again will get a notification to the team and say your lap has been deleted, or you're going to have to serve a penalty. So it's a harsh way of your drivers who've never had to be disciplined in this manner for, well, never in their career, most of them, now having to retro-learn what it was like in the good old days.
So it's Maro Engel at the top of the charts at the moment in the TalkSport WRT Mercedes, and the driver who set that time, Luca Stoltz, is down in the pit lane with Gemma Scott.
Luca, for the moment you've got the fastest lap, and that was quite an impressive lap that you put in.
Yeah, I mean, we're not sure if we are fast enough, because we don't have a tire situation, because everybody has some carryovers from Spa, but we don't have Mara and me, because we race with HRT in Spa, and here it's TalkSport, so the tire situation is a bit different. But yeah, car felt quite good, but I still think we have some work to do before qualifying.
The track seems to be getting a little wet in parts. Do you think there will be anybody going faster?
Well, I don't hope so, but yeah, you see some clouds here and there, but no big rain, so there's definitely room for improvement.
Thank you.
Cheers.
So, straight talking there from Lucas Stoltz, and just got news up from Gemma just before that interview that when Adam Christodoulou went off and had his rotation up at, or his big moment up at Hawthorns, the rear of the car locked up for whatever reason. Rear lock-up is all I've been told.
Well, there's only two reasons for that. One is either under brakes, because you've got an imbalance in your front to rear brake ratio, or the downshift was too aggressive, and that could have caused a momentary lock-up. So it's down to the engineers, that one, I think.
Yeah, well, that's how it comes up. Only gradually starting to see some quicker times coming in there, but they're from the drivers in the second half of the field. Last time around, Enrique Chaves always seems to be in 19th place, always seems at this meeting to be second in Pro-Am, but he improved for Barwell Motorsport, and a few places behind him, an improvement from Norbert Siedler, but he's not yet in the top 20. He's chipping away. This must be slightly distressing for the 163 crew. And Andrea Bertolini has moved off the bottom of the charts. He's moved up to 26th position. 27th is bottom, but we do have 28 cars, but still the Aston Martin Thomas Tuchel was being given a 5-minute stop and go, a 10-minute stop and go at the start of the session, but the car hasn't come out since. They're still working on it.
Well, they certainly were, because they had the front of the car, all the front bodywork was removed from the car. They were digging into the front end. We couldn't see whether it was to do with suspension or whether it was engine or whatever related. As Maro Engel makes his way around, Druids down the hill. So still just the 27 cars that are on track, waiting to see when the Aston hopefully will be able to get out. 17 or so minutes now on the clock.
Well, the sister car is just coming out. Alexander West just leaving the pit lane in 188. This is Garage 59 Aston Martin. He's in 23rd position. He's 4th in the Pro-Am class.
On board with the Lamborghini. Still showing Ricardo Feller behind the wheel, still in 3rd position. Not looking for an improvement this lap. That's a pretty good entry, mid-corner and exit for Ricardo Feller.
You know, what I love, if you haven't watched a race at Brands Hatch for a while, and you get quick cars like these GT3 cars, is just how mighty it is through Paddock Hill Bend. And just the fact you can be a few degrees out, and that manifests itself, and it multiplies through the corner, and your options suddenly become very limited indeed.
Well, part of the joy of driving at Brands is that your precision pays. You know, taking liberties and driving in a sort of flamboyant manner usually ends up hurting you. Up through Hawthorns, a lot of work on the wheel for Ricardo Feller. I mean, whether he's having to make minute adjustments all the way through, there he had a quick snap oversteer at the back of the Lamborghini. So we haven't seen a sector time on this particular run, indicating well, there's nothing coming up in green or purple. So again, don't expect to see any further improvement. Again, going through a little dust cloud picked up on the edge of the Sterlings.
Yeah, just trying to work out who that was up ahead of him. It was car number 31. They're all there or thereabouts, but when your tyres are sweet around here, you can really, really hook it up. So just to reiterate, at this moment, with just under 16 minutes remaining in this 1 hour pre-qualifying session, it's Maro Engel, top of the charts. For the top sport, number 6 Mercedes, Ezekiel Perez Companc, second for the 90 Mad Panda Motorsport Mercedes. The 3rd place car is this one, the number 14 Lamborghini.
So a driver change there we see. So that'll be Alex Fontana getting in behind the wheel. Ricardo Feller nearly slams the door off its hinges as he walks away. I'm not sure he looked happy about that particularly.
Yes, I don't know if he was blocked or anything. He had fairly good lapping, and the fact was he did 3 or 4 fast laps. A lot of the others have done 1 fast lap and either had traffic or dropped away, but that was, I thought, a really impressive run from Ricardo Feller. And the onboard footage showed he was fully committed, even at the start of his in-lap going through Paddock Hill Bend.
So everything's gone fairly static. The only improver actually is the sister 163 Lamborghini. Norbert Siedler, he's up to 21st. But again, in that car, way outside there, we see it coming up into Druids, way outside where it would naturally, I would expect it to be.
Yes, but it's done a lot of laps close to the best time it's done. That's the weird thing. It hasn't just managed to pull one out of the bag. It's there or thereabouts, but unfortunately for them, they're more than a second away from the pace here. And you have to be dealing in tenths of a second if you're going to be competitive here. It's the top. We've got the top 4 cars covered by absolutely nothing, John. I could do the maths. We've got about 1/100th of a second covers the top 4 cars. It's that close.
Well, the fastest car is coming up behind what is currently the slowest car on the racetrack. How long will it take the fastest car to overtake the slowest car? Well, Roda stays to the right, but look, under acceleration, nothing the Mercedes can do. And this is what racing at Brands Hatch will be dictated by. And rightly, Marouengo decides to bail, come into the pit lane, new point, because he couldn't find a way. He may have predetermined he was coming in anyway, so didn't put in the effort to find a way around the Ferrari. But that is the level of performance in the straight line of all these cars is so equally matched. It's very, very hard to find a way through. Straights are quite short, and some of the corners are quick corners.
But it also really makes you focus on how you're going to handle your race tactics. It's 2 one-hour races with a pit stop in the middle. Get your pit stop and come out behind a slower car, and it's really, really going to cost you. You've just got to be so sure that you're going to bring the car in without damage in terms of getting the wrong traffic when you rejoin. They often all come in together, and then nobody loses out in that particularly. But it's always a factor at Brands Hatch. More improvements further down the field. Enrique Chavez, SRO Motorsport, moves up 3 positions to go 17th fastest overall. Another improvement from Norbert Siedler, but again, hasn't moved him up the charts. Still down in 21st position.
You look at Leo Russell in the Audi 25. Again, 6/10 start in Sector 1, 3/10 Sector 2. And is he coming in? Oh, yes, he's decided wisely there's nothing to be gained by staying out and basically flogging a horse when the grip isn't there.
Yeah, that seems to be the way. We've got about 8 cars in the pits. Still got that number 159 Aston Martin in the pits. Alex West has brought the sister car in, has he? Can't quite tell. But still Marouengo, the number 6 Mercedes, at the top of the time charts. 1 minute 24.918 seconds.
Second quickest in Pro-Am, Enrique Chavez, has actually made an improvement. So he is now up to 17th. He's the second quickest of the Pro-Am field. So the gap between the current fastest car, Valentin Pierberg, and Chavez is...
it's about 100th of a second.
It's not an awful lot of time.
Sorry, 1/10 of a second, I beg your pardon. Not much. Right, Santalot Racing into the pits, bonnet up. Must say Leo Russell's really impressed me since he came across from Racing Sports Prototypes. He's stuck in and great performance last time out at Misano, right at the sharp end of the field. 7th fastest at the moment. So of the Audi crews, they're looking pretty good. The top Audi crew at the moment is the 31 Team WRT entry. Frank Bird at the wheel at the moment, and rear cheerer Tomita. So Tomita was trying to learn Brands Hatch. He seems to have done a very good job so far.
So watch Jim Pla, who had been at one point quickest. I mean, again, one of the drivers that I would love to see Jim Pla in a full pro car to see what his ultimate potential and that of his teammates could actually achieve, because certainly he just drags performances out of the 87 Mercedes every time he's in it.
He really does, and often gets rather lost. You see his performance being good, and then it gets dropped back when the co-driver takes over. So another lap that other people will be quite pleased with. 1 minute 26.2, but for him that's absolutely no improvement. And Enrique Chavez didn't improve. It looks like Enrique Chavez in the Barwell Motorsport Lamborghini was going to go up several positions. He improved in Sector 1 and Sector 2, but his third sector not good enough to move him any further forward than the 17th that he already occupied.
Just 10 minutes of this 1 hour session remaining. So if teams have, I mean, it was explained to us by Lucas Stoltz that some teams had carryover tyres from Spa 24, and some of those might have been very fresh tyres. Whether anybody will consider putting on a new set of rubber, because it is such an important grid to be at the front of, to see what your potential lap time is. That means you might give up a set of tyres for either Q2 or Q1, but it's important to know where you might end up, and if it's going to happen, it's going to happen in the remaining 10 minutes.
That's such a tough call to make, isn't it? Risk the rubber or actually not know where you really, really are. So we'll see if anybody starts making those decisions. I'm sure before the end of the session we'll have more people done for stop and go, given track limit warnings, and those can lead to stop and go. I can't remember if we mentioned the 163 Lamborghini has had to serve that time. 5-minute stop and go for them, exceeding track limits. The 1:63 shared by Norbert Siedler and Albert Costa. Neither of those will be happy with that, but rules are rules, and the more people transgress, the more they've got no one else to blame than themselves.
Andrea Bertolini has made a further improvement, up from 27th at 1.9, he's 23rd. He's the only car on track currently who has actually made an improvement. There is a dearth of green arrows, green pointing upwards, red pointing downwards. So Andrea Bertolini will be pleased with that.
Our championship leaders, where are they on the chart? You have to look some way down to 10th position. Dries van Tor started the second in the 32 Team WRT Audi, and Charles Weerts has taken over, but is in the pits at the moment. That lurid colour scheme just pulling to a halt, the bright orange nose and the white and black Audi. There's the sister car, that's the best place of the Audis. Frank Bird's driven it. Rear to meter is possibly going back out for another crack at these track conditions. Again, he's one of the drivers that really has to learn this circuit. Hasn't been here before, but don't forget, Japanese drivers have quite a few circuits, quite like Brands Hatch. Gradient change, narrow, old school.
Are they going to put on another set of tyres on this car? It's going up on the jacks, so they're going to rotate it. Whether they're going to rotate it and push it into the garage, or just rotate it to enable them to do the minimum amount of work that the permitted nose going back in. So it's not been a happy session for this 32 WRT Audi. As we see, the 188 Aston Martin that's about to get rolling down the pit lane, Alexander West and Johnny Adams.
Let's see what that can do. Just to reiterate, this is a pre-qualifying session, but the hour is nearly up. An hour of racing, all delayed by the best part of an hour after barrier repairs. In the first time these cars were on track, Benjamin Goethe went off and effectively went straight on through the gravel trap into the tyre wall at Westfield first thing this morning, and it took an hour for the barrier repairs until anything could go back on the circuit. And since then, that car has got itself up into 15th position. We have 28 cars in all. Only 27 have gone out in this session. The 159 Aston Martin, damaged and penalised in free practice this morning, has not made it out onto the track. Fastest of all, still the number 6 TopSport WRT Mercedes, but only by 21 thousandths of a second from the Mad Panda Motorsport Mercedes. There's a bit of a theme here. 4 Mercedes in the top 5 runners, split by the Alex Fontana, Ricardo Feller, number 14 Lamborghini in 3rd place overall, but very, very close on times.
Well, we're getting the times for the Mercedes, but we're on board with the Bentley, so a little bit of confusion as regarding identification, but with the Bentley up, whoa, in a minute, Ken, just the waved yellow flag, and somebody's gone off as it's Tempesta.
Yeah, it's Giorgio Roda bringing up the rear of the charts, and unfortunately getting the rear of the car facing in the wrong direction in the ground.
And I suspect that where that car is, we're going to see possibly a full course yellow.
6.5 minutes remaining.
Maybe.
And even red.
Maybe. And could you imagine if you just decided to go out and do your last run at the last minute?
On the new rubber.
Oh, dear me. So what happened? Again, looks like it lost the back of the car, the back of the Ferrari coming into Sterling's, and here we go. So let's watch and see what happened to Giorgio Roda. Gets through Sheen curve fine, comes up, puts the brakes on. Oh, again, right rear wheel maybe caught the line. Well,
the important thing there, we didn't hear the crump noise. Didn't quite make it to the tyre wall on the outside, but I think by the smallest of margins, you're quite right, John, he was just too close to the right-hand side of the track, and I think possibly just kissed the grass.
And I think we may have a red flag.
Yeah, it's red. I've got red
flag.
lights around the circuit, red flags as well. So it's been a day of track limit excesses. People have been warned. They've had the penalties in the pit lane, but it's been about maximising the moment, and Amaro Engel and Lucas Stoltz was the driver who set the fastest time of all. But for TopSport WRT, seems to be coming good at the right moment. For the Mercedes crews, it's looking very, very good indeed. Audi crews seem to be in the next batch, and then the great array of cars, the Lamborghinis, the Porsches, with the exception of that number 14 Lamborghini that very much is in the mix, but it does look good for Mercedes. But as we say that, the grey cloud starts to shift and the sky is brightening, so we could have different track conditions when we get to qualifying. It's going to be very, very quick fire, as always.
Well, 2 20-minute sessions, and everybody on the racetrack, be it 27 or 28 cars, will be a very, very busy Brands Hatch, and just finding one lap where you're not going to be impaired by another car it's almost, luck of the draw as much as it is. Some drivers do manage to find those gaps in a very busy racetrack and get those magic laps recorded. But everybody now coming back out the mandatory 50 kilometers per hour, and they'll go into the pit lane. I would be very surprised. Session will not be resumed, as you pointed out there, Bruce. So what a lovely way to come to Brands Hatch and enjoy your day. Bring the family, a picnic. And there's a race on. There's not race at the minute, but anyway, there's racing going on.
Well, it was good to see spectators starting to come through the gates first thing this morning, and they've continued to come in. So great to have spectators back at the circuit. For Giorgio Roda, he doesn't want anybody to see him at the moment because a little bit of a mistake, and that team has to have form. So just to reiterate, this session will not be resuming with 6.5 minutes on the clock. When Giorgio Roda went round and stuck it in the gravel, the car won't be cleared before that. And in a day that already got off on a sort of wrong footing with barrier damage up at Westfield, playing catch up, but a lot of teams will have learnt something from that session had they learnt enough to feel really confident in maybe possibly changing track conditions when we head towards qualifying. But it's all about being on the track and getting that information back, John.
It's been I would call it an even sort of day to date. Teams will be saying, we didn't quite get through the program of work that we'd intended to do. There's always going to be somebody in the pit lane who'll feel that they got shortchanged. Actually, to be honest, most people will feel they've been shortchanged, but that's the nature of the racetrack. It doesn't take a prisoner. So if you make a small misjudgment, as we saw the Ferrari doing coming into Stirling's, the consequences are that you end up in a gravel bed, and that leads to a full course yellow and the red flag and session suspended, and it's all over.
Yep, and for the 159 Aston Martin, we didn't get to see that at all in session. I was slightly concerned that the one time we saw it in the garage, there wasn't anybody working on it. The bonnet was up, and that's a problem they know, and they needed to get parts, but that didn't come out at all. It was already there because it was being punished for causing a collision into Paddock Hill Bend in the previous session, but they've lost the entirety of pre-qualifying, so they're going to go into qualifying blind, if indeed they're ready to go out, because we don't know yet what the problem is with the 159. But right now, good to have Allied Racing. They've shown a decent turn of speed early on, but fell down the order a little bit to middle order. Klaus Bechler sharing the Porsche. Great, the only Porsche in the mix for Allied Racing this weekend. 222, Julian Apostolos, young Swiss racer, and Klaus Bechler. Good to have them here. Great livery on that car as well. But suddenly silence falls over the pit lane. But not full silence, because TalkSport WRT, the number 6 Mercedes, was fastest of all. We've heard from the first driver, Luca Stoltz, and now Gemma has found Mauro Engel.
Mauro, can we say it's a Mercedes favourite track here?
It's definitely a track we enjoy coming to. It's fantastic to be back racing in the UK as well. It's obviously been a while, and then to come here to this track is great. It's such a pleasure always to drive the GP circuit here at Brands, and yeah, for sure our car handles the track well. Bit of fine tuning always to do. It's quite short, the practice sessions today, and a compressed weekend. So yeah, we're just trying to get the best out of it. But good lap by Luca there to put us P1 in this session.
Yeah, definitely a great lap by Luca, and difficult for anybody to go any faster in that last part of the session.
Yeah, there was a few sort of drops of rain throughout the session, even I think when Luca was out, but yeah, look, I mean, so far so good. Bit of fine-tuning to do, and then let's see where we are in qualifying.
How reflective are those times in comparison to what we expect to see in the final qualifying sessions?
Yes and no, because I think not everyone ran tires there, and so, or new tires there. So let's see. It's hard to tell because it depends on what other teams sort of have as carryover tires for this weekend. And yeah, so we're best off just trying to focus on ourselves, try and find the best balance, and hopefully we'll be in the mix.
Well, looking good so far. Thank you.
Thank you. Cheers.
Mauro Engel is as poised and considered as ever, but for TalkSport WRT, that was a very, very good showing. And Mercedes certainly looking very handy in the mix as pre-qualifying comes to an end, John. So what did we learn? We learnt you have to get your times in. You've got to get space on the track, and Mercedes look good. As you can see, 4 of the top 5 cars are Mercedes. TalkSport WRT top ahead of the Mad Panda Motorsport with that great lap from Rick Brokers. And then Riccardo Fella set the pace for the best of the Lamborghinis in 3rd fastest. Timo Bogoslawski, Raffaele Marcello set some times, got warnings for track limits. Konstantin Teroshenko and Jim Pla completing a good run for ACA ASP. Best of the Audis down in 6th place. Frank Bird and Ryoichiro Tomita, just ahead of Leah Russell and Christopher Haase. Max Hoffer in new this weekend alongside Matthias Drew. They're good for 8th place. And Petru Umberescu and Julgunion 9th. That's the third of the ASP Mercedes. And championship leaders Charles Weerts and Dries van Tor down in 10th place, 7/10 down. Is it time to panic, John?
I think they would be looking at the numbers and wondering what went wrong. They might say, well, we did all the homework we needed to do because we're looking at race pace and so on and so forth. But what they need to do, and I hope they hadn't done, because that time would be disappointing if they were looking at a qualifying pace. 10th would not be a grid position I would want to have, in spite of having the massive lead in the Sprint Cup Championship.
Yes, the drivers talk about the difference between a 0 and maximum points is enough to really swing this championship around. They are sitting on a very, very tidy advantage in the championship, but it's going to be tight here, and qualifying is going to be super, super important, where track position is everything. So, an hour of pre-qualifying. These are the highlights, and let's ride on board and through the gravel with Raffaele Marciello, ever the showman. That was getting it wrong on the exit of Paddock Hill Bend and just rejoining the circuit as the barriers came in on the approach to Druids. Mad Panda Motorsport, Rick Brokers went out. He was in the middle of the order, then bang, he was at the top of the charts. The best of the Lamborghini racers all through the pre-qualifying session was the number 14 crew. 77 car from Barwell Motorsport was really running well in the Pro-Am class for Lamborghini, but it was about staying on the track. Not everyone managed it. Paddock Hill Bend, lots of drivers getting pinged for exceeding track limits there. That was the 33 Rinaldi Racing Ferrari, just about getting back on the circuit. Very dusty indeed. But then Lucas Stoltz, with the rain possibly just starting to drizzle a little bit at the far end of the circuit, Lucas Stoltz put Top Sport WRT to the top of the charts. Rear Chira Tomita, Frank Bird went very well for the number 31 Audi from Team WRT, but as the session went toward its conclusion, harder and harder to set quick laps. The 163 Lamborghini just had its problems, actually pulled off the circuit there to keep out of the way, but it really seemed to be a Mercedes day. And for Top Sport WRT, job very well done indeed. Both their drivers setting times. And this is what brought the session to an end as Giorgio Roda went round and stuck his Ferrari in the gravel at Stirling's. Out came the red flag. Over and out.